My review of the Beach Boys' self-titled 1985 album. It was produced by Steve Levine, I think is how you say that. So this album was it was after my Beach Boys cutoff period, so after the Light album. I didn't buy this until a couple months ago, pretty much around the same time as Keeping the Summer Alive. I think I got them like on the same day, or at least I listened to them on the same day. I know I listened to them on the same day. Because at first I liked this one more, but my opinion's definitely changed on that, and I think Keeping the Summer Alive is definitely a better album. This album, I don't think it's as bad as what I had read about it. A lot of people don't like this album. I don't think it's great. I think it has a lot of like issues with it, but I think that there's enough songs that I kind of like on here to make it not as bad as what I had heard. So this I think my main problem with this album is in the production, like the sound of it. And this album just it sounds like the 80s, like vomited up a Beach Boys album. It's just super like 80s sounding, which I don't usually really hate, but it's got some other flaws that make that even worse. I think that like if you're somebody that doesn't even like, or that like can't stand the like 80s sounding production at all, just like don't even bother with this album because you're not gonna like it. The other big problem with it, with the production, that kind of like I feel like ruins it for me, is just that the vocals like don't sound good on this album. I mean, the Beach Boys, that's what they're for, basically. You know, is their vocals. Like that's why they're my favorite band, is because I think that they have the best vocals of any band, and just they don't sound good on here, and it sounds to me like it's because of the production. I know that like, you know, they were getting older at this point, and their voices were a little bit different, but like it just like sounds like there's like a ton of like echo on the voices and stuff. Like they just really sound like unnatural and just weird and like not good at all. This has to be like probably the worst produced Beach Boys album up to this point that I've heard. Like it just does not sound good, and I've never heard of the producer that did this before. I kind of looked it up on was looking up stuff on just Wikipedia about the album before doing this, because I don't know a lot about this album or like the time it was made in their career, but like I didn't recognize anything that this producer had worked on before, other than this album. And one of the things that Wikipedia said was it just had like a comment that said that the producer had said that he was proud of this album and kind of was disappointed it didn't get better reviews or something. But like, being proud of this, really? Like, I don't know if he actually said that, but yeah, it's just, this is terrible sounding to me. Just like definitely the worst produced album I've heard by them up to this point, and might be like the worst produced one. I don't know. There's one coming up that I know definitely probably give it a run for that, but just yeah, that's my main problem with the album. It's just not even like the 80s-ness of the production, but just how bad the production sounds. And first song, Get You Back, was the only song that I was familiar with going into this album. It was on the Greatest Hits album that I had like towards the end of the album, so it was never really one of the songs that I was super into, but it was kind of something that I had started listening to probably a little bit more recently, as I kind of like run out of other Beach Boys songs to listen to, since I've listened to the rest of their earlier stuff so much. But it was written by Mike Love and Terry Melcher, which they kind of go on to commit other atrocities later on. like that team. But kind of Terry Melcher is interesting to me because he was producer of the Byrds, which the Byrds are like my second favorite band, pretty much. If I had to pick a favorite band, which is kind of hard, really to do. I would say the Beach Boys is my favorite band, and the Byrds is probably second. But I mean, there's a lot of bands I really love. So, but anyway, I'm kind of rambling. But yeah, Terry Melcher produced the first two Byrds albums, and then let's see, I think the Ballad of Easy Rider, Untitled, and Bird Maniacs, all of which are albums that I really love. And so I think he's like a really talented producer, and it's just kind of interesting that he kind of has this like, I don't know, like teams up with Mike Love, and then just goes on and does like this bad, like horrible stuff kind of. No, I mean, not that this song's actually kind of good, but like later on they do some stuff that's horrible, and I'm just kind of like, why? Because Terry Melcher is actually like pretty talented, I feel like. But I don't know, maybe like by this point in time, just like everybody that old, had just completely like lost all good taste. But yeah, Get You Back kind of, it's kind of like a do it again type song, kind of going for that older nostalgic vibe, and it's one that like that kind of works for me, but it's just not the greatest sounding on this album. But it's not, this isn't one where like the production's like too horrible, but it's still, to me, it just doesn't sound that good. Like even like Mike's lead vocal, just it doesn't sound that great. The second song, It's Getting Late, is a song by Carl and like a whole army of co-writers. This one I really like parts of it. Kind of, I think the main, I don't know if it's like the chorus or the verse, but kind of the main vocal melody part that Carl sings I like a lot. And some of the other parts of the song, though, aren't that interesting. It goes into these kind of weird, like, I don't know, 80s like instrumental parts. But it's overall I like it. The third song, Crack at Your Love, sung by Brian and Al. This one has production parts on it that just like it kind of makes me want to vomit. Like Al's vocal on it just sounds like so badly produced, and I don't understand why. I guess there would be like a bad vocal from Al, really, because his voice of all the members has kind of held up the best over the years and sounds the most, at least, I mean, even when I saw him in 2012, at least, I mean, he sounded pretty good still, like, still, I think the most recognizably close to his, like, 60s younger self of any of them. So, it's kind of surprising to hear him give a bad vocal here, like this bad, and I just don't know, like, there's one point where it even sounds like he goes a little bit off, and like pretty obviously, and I just like, why did they leave that in there? So I don't know if like maybe it was just a vocal he was struggling with, or what, if the producer didn't know, you know, what good vocals sounded like, or what's up with this, but yeah, it's bad in places. But I feel like if you get past the, like, I feel like there's kind of a sort of good song in here somewhere, at least a kind of catchy song. I don't know, I think the lyrics are kind of a little cheesy, but there's some like catchy melodies here, but you just have to really get under just a horrible production. And this one, like, not even the vocals aren't even like the only bad part. Here I kind of feel like the whole just instrumental production of it is just kind of obnoxious sounding, really. Like, it's just kind of too much. The fourth song, Maybe I Don't Know, is another Carl song with another like army of songwriters or co-songwriters, and I think that it's just kind of like a melodyless like sludge of a song, really. Like, I couldn't find like anything catchy about it, really. And the production of it like distorts Carl's vocal so much and just makes it sound so like unrecognizable that it doesn't, like, usually Carl sings so well that he could kind of save some like more underwhelming songs just by his vocal performance, but the production here just makes it so bad that like it doesn't do anything. The fifth song, She Believes in Love Again, Bruce and Carl song, sung by both of them, and it's another one where I don't, like, the vocals just don't sound that well produced. Bruce's parts kind of in particular a little bit, and it's not like, and it doesn't, to me it doesn't sound like his fault really. It just sounds like the production's bad. Like, I don't know, a lot of them, the vocals, I guess not so much on this song, but like a lot of them just sound like really echoey to me. I sort of like the song, is what I wrote. I can't really remember what my overall opinion of it was, but yeah, I kind of like it, I guess. The sixth song, California's Calling, song by Al and Brian. This one, kind of, I didn't like it at first, but it's grown on me, and now I like it. The production doesn't really ruin it for me. It's kind of, I think, a song that's similar, in kind of a similar vein to Get You Back, of like, it's definitely kind of a nod to their, older stuff and like nostalgia type stuff, but I think it kind of works, and the production doesn't kill it, and the vocals don't sound that horrible on it, so I think it's kind of one of the better songs, really. The seventh song, Passing a Friend, is a cover, I think. This one actually is the one song where I think I might kind of like the production, like the instrumental backing stuff. I think is interesting, at least. But overall, I kind of can't figure out what I think of this song. Like, I think I either really like it or really hate it. I don't know, I'm just gonna have to listen to it more to figure out, but I don't feel that motivated to try to figure out, really, because I don't know. It's a weird song. I don't really know how to feel about it. Probably the only song on here that I'm just like, The eighth song, I'm So Lonely, another Brian song. This is actually, I think, probably my favorite song on the album. Brian sings it, most of it. It's some Carl. It's got kind of Brian's 80s voice, which is different than Brian's late 70s voice, and different than Brian's 60s voice. But yeah, I think it's a good song, pretty catchy. Good performance by Brian. It's not like ruined too much by the production. The ninth song, Where I Belong, Carl and Bruce song. This one I kind of like, and for some reason, I don't really know why, but every time I listen to it, I just keep picturing like scenes from The Lion King, so it just reminds me of The Lion King for some reason. Don't know why. The 10th song, I Do Love You, is a Stevie Wonder cover. I don't know the actual song, but this cover version I don't really like. It's kind of the part that where I think Al sings on here, but the part where he sings "I Do Love You," but it irritates me for some reason, the way he sings it. I don't know why, but it just kind of really annoys me a little bit. So I don't like this one. And then the 11th song, "It's Just a Matter of Time," is another song by Brian, and I think it's kind of a nice way to close the album. It's not like a super standout song, I don't think, but I like the vocal melody of it, and I think that it's one that the more I listen to it, the more I'm gonna kind of like it. So I think it's a good way to close the album. But yeah, the Beach Boys as a whole, I'd say I would give this album a 2 out of 5, which I always say that I think like 2 out of 5 for me would be like mediocre to bad, and for me personally, I would say this leans more towards the mediocre side than bad, and I think that's just because there are some moments that I do like. Really, I'm So Lonely is the only song on this album that I go back and listen to like a whole bunch, or at least that I have recently, or since listening to this album. But I don't know. I think it has enough like strong moments to make it just kind of mediocre instead of outright bad. But I could see why people would think this is just a bad album. Like, I definitely understand that viewpoint. This is the first album in their discography, I think, that I have that view of those. This is the point where they finally gotten bad to me. Because yeah, I mean, LA album and MIU album, like those albums, and I know a lot of people like don't like those albums. I think they're pretty good. Like, I can understand why people don't like them, but I really like them. I think they're really underrated. And even Keeping the Summer Alive, I thought was pretty good. Like, not quite as good as those two, but like just a kind of small step down, really. But this is like pretty big step down from that. This is a lot worse. And it's mainly, I think, on the production. Like, there's definitely songs I'm not crazy about, but the production just does not do this album any favors. It's like terrible on so many songs, and the vocals sound like the worst of it. I think any Beach Boys album that I've heard. Even maybe, well, I don't know, Summer in Paradise is coming up, and I've like barely listened to that one, and I know that's the worst, and just based off of what I've heard, I think it's the worst, which is kind of a spoiler, but I think everybody knows that that's where that's going. But yeah, that album might, I think, sound a little bit better than this album from what I've heard, like vocal wise. This album just sounds like, I don't know, like half the vocals on this album sound like were takes that shouldn't have been used, and they're just like covered in echo to try to hide that. So yeah, just a really bad sounding album in a lot of ways. Probably, I don't know, possibly in the running for like their worst produced album. I would say only check this out if you've listened to everything before it. Definitely don't start